Detroit never sleeps. The city, with its dark streets and obscure alleys, hides secrets that can destroy lives. At the center of this maze of betrayals is Jack, a man devastated by the bitterest discovery of his life. His wife, Linda, was having an affair with Michael, her best friend's husband. The pain of betrayal cut deep, but Jack wasn't the type to cry in silence. He looked at Linda, his pained expression turning into a mask of cold determination. "Do you think you can betray me and get away with it?" Jack thought. Little did Linda and Michael know that Jack was keeping a secret, a financial asset that could turn the tide. Revenge would be meticulous, icy, and no one would ever imagine what was coming. With a sharp mind and a hardened heart, Jack began to plan every detail. His revenge would not just be about betrayal, but about destroying whoever dared to play with his heart. In the underworld of Detroit, a deadly game was about to begin, and Jack held all the cards. Linda and Michael would never see the storm coming. Detroit, a city marked by contrasts, was home to Jack and Linda. Jack, a man in his 40s, was a civil engineer and spent his days overseeing grandiose projects, but his true passion was restoring old cars. He spent nights in the small shed behind his house, getting grease on his hands as he worked on a '67 Mustang. Jack was reserved, meticulous, and fiercely loyal. Linda, on the other hand, was a vibrant woman in her early 30s whose smile could light up any room. He worked as an interior designer and had impeccable taste for transforming ordinary spaces into works of art. She was sociable, loved parties and events and had an extensive circle of friends, including Sarah, her best friend since college. Sarah was married to Michael, a charismatic and successful businessman. The quartet often hung out together, sharing dinners and trips, seemingly an inseparable group. Jack and Linda lived in an elegant house in a quiet neighborhood in Detroit. The red brick facade and the well-kept garden reflected the harmony that seemed to reign in the home. However, behind the well-decorated curtains, a silent storm was brewing. Jack, always attentive and affectionate, had begun to notice subtle changes in Linda's behavior. She seemed distant, distracted, and spent a lot of time on the phone or in work meetings that went on for hours. One night, while Jack was in the shed working on his Mustang, he heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Curious, he peeked out the window and saw Linda laughing with Michael. The scene should have been comforting, but something about the way they looked at each other sent a chill running down Jack's spine. He decided not to confront them, but began to pay more attention. Over the next few days, Jack noticed that Linda often left without giving clear explanations. The strong perfume, the more daring clothes and the furtive smiles while using the phone were undeniable signs. He needed concrete proof. He hired a private detective, an old trusted friend, to follow Linda and Michael. What he discovered didn't surprise him, but it devastated him. Photos and videos confirmed the affair between his wife and her best friend's husband. The betrayal was like a sharp blade, cutting deep. As Jack digested the betrayal, he began to plan. Instead of immediately confronting Linda, he decided to maintain the facade of normalcy. His nights in the warehouse became moments of reflection and planning. He knew he needed to be strategic. The financial secret he had kept for years, the result of discreet investments and transactions, would be the key to his revenge. It was a trump card he had kept hidden even from Linda, waiting for the right moment to use it. Meanwhile, Linda continued her double life. During the day, she was the devoted wife, decorating the house and attending social events. At night, she indulged in forbidden romance with Michael. The adrenaline of betrayal blinded her to the risks she was taking. Michael, always confident and self-assured, believed he was in control of the situation, without suspecting that Jack was one step ahead. Detroit, with its towering skyscrapers and gloomy streets, reflected Jack's state of mind. The city he loved now seemed a maze of betrayals and secrets. But he was determined. Revenge would be precise, cold and devastating. Jack immersed himself in his plan with the same meticulousness he applied to restoring his cars. Every detail mattered. Every move would be calculated. Linda and Michael continued their clandestine meetings, oblivious to the fact that they were being watched. Jack maintained the facade, treating Linda with the same kindness as always, but his gaze had become sharper, his smile more restrained. He knew he needed patience. Revenge, to be perfect, needed time and precision. And so, while the city of Detroit went about its chaotic business, a cold, meticulous plan unfolded behind the scenes. Jack, betrayed and determined, was preparing for the final move, the one that would change Linda and Michael's lives forever. The scene was set, the characters were in their places. The revenge game was about to begin, and no one imagined what was coming. Jack continued to watch Linda and Michael closely, noticing more and more details that confirmed the betrayal. He maintained the facade of a devoted husband, but inside, the coldness of his revenge was solidifying. I knew that confronting them directly wouldn't be enough. He wanted them to feel the pain and humiliation he felt, and to do that, he needed a meticulous plan. First, Jack began to quietly move his finances. The financial secret he kept, made up of smart investments and offshore accounts, would be the perfect weapon. He transferred part of his money to accounts in the name of third parties, making any attempt to trace it difficult. Simultaneously, he began collecting evidence of Michael's suspicious activities, which could be used against him. On a rainy night, Jack met with Sarah at a discreet cafe in downtown Detroit. Sarah looked exhausted, her eyes tired and her face haggard. Jack knew he needed to earn her trust for his plan to work. They talked for hours, and Sarah finally confessed that she knew about Michael and Linda's affair. She herself was destroyed, but she didn't know what to do. Jack saw this as an opportunity. He proposed an alliance to Sarah, a form of revenge that would make them both pay for what they did. Sarah agreed, reluctantly but aware that she needed to take action. Together, they began to draw up a plan. Sarah offered to help gather more evidence against Michael, while Jack focused on Linda. Their partnership grew stronger as the weeks went by, and with each new piece of information, the revenge network expanded. Jack then decided to insert himself into Michael's world. Through contacts in the financial market, he managed to arrange a meeting with Michael under a business pretext. During the meeting, he pretended to be interested in investing in Michael's company, a perfect pretext to get closer and gain his trust. Michael, always ambitious, took the bait and the two began working together on fictional projects that would allow Jack to gain more information about Michael's business and fraud. Meanwhile, Linda remained oblivious to Jack's machinations. She continued to live her double life, without suspecting that her husband was carefully preparing a trap. She was immersed in the thrill of forbidden romance, unaware that her every move was being monitored. The nights she said she was in meetings were recorded by Jack, who secretly accumulated evidence. Over time, Jack began to plant small seeds of distrust between Michael and Linda. Using information Sarah provided, Jack made anonymous calls and sent encrypted messages that hinted at betrayal and conspiracies. Linda began to notice changes in Michael's behavior, as he became increasingly paranoid and distant. Doubts and tensions between the lovers began to emerge, creating fissures in their relationship. Jack's plan continued to unfold like a finely tuned clock. On a cold December night, he finally saw the perfect opportunity to take the next step. Sarah had discovered that Michael was planning a major illegal financial transaction. Jack knew this was the time to act. Using his connections, he was able to report the transaction to authorities anonymously, ensuring Michael was investigated. Investigations began, and Michael was taken by surprise. His world began to fall apart as evidence of his illegal activities came to light. Desperate, he tried to hide the truth from Linda, but the tension between them was palpable. Linda, now more concerned about Michael's changes in behavior, began to move away from him, not realizing that she was falling into the trap that Jack had set. Amidst the chaos, Jack maintained his cold and calculating stance. He continued to work on his Mustang, waiting for the right moment for the final move. He knew Michael's downfall was imminent, and Linda would also pay for her betrayals. The revenge was about to be completed, but there was still one last move left, one that would ensure they both felt the true weight of their actions. Days passed, and the investigation into Michael intensified. Authorities discovered a series of frauds he had committed over the years. Michael, in desperation, tried to seek help from Linda, but she was increasingly distant, wrapped up in her own doubts and fears. Jack knew the time to act was near. Finally, on a gray afternoon, Jack received the news he was waiting for. Michael had been arrested, and his company was under investigation. Linda, now alone and desperate, didn't know who to turn to. Jack then revealed his financial secret, showing that he had been responsible for exposing Michael. Coldly, he explained every detail of his plan to Linda, leaving her speechless. She finally understood the extent of her betrayal and the thoroughness of Jack's revenge. Detroit, with its cold, dark streets, had been the scene of a carefully orchestrated revenge. Jack, betrayed and humiliated, managed to turn the tables, destroying those who dared to play with his feelings. The next step of her revenge was ready to be revealed, and Linda, now aware of her mistake, could do nothing but wait for the final blow. Winter in Detroit was bitterly cold, but nothing compared to the coldness of Jack's revenge. After Michael's arrest, the fallout began to unfold quickly. Michael's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and Linda, completely shaken, found herself alone and lost. The house, once a haven of safety and comfort, now seemed like a place for nightmares. Jack maintained his composure, his serene expression hiding the storm within. He knew the time to reveal his financial secret was near, and it would be the final blow to Linda and Michael. But first, I needed to create the perfect scenario for the reveal. One quiet night, while Linda was in her bedroom, Jack called her into the living room for a chat. He prepared the room carefully, the dim lights and the roaring fireplace creating a heavy atmosphere. Linda descended slowly, her heart beating wildly, fearing what was to come. "We need to talk," Jack said, his voice firm and cold. Linda sat on the sofa, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I know what you did, Linda," Jack continued, slowly approaching. "I know about you and Michael. I know all the lies, all the betrayals." Linda lifted her head, her eyes wide with shock and fear. "Jack, I can explain." "No need to explain," Jack interrupted. "I already know everything. And more than that, I also know about Michael's dirty dealings. That's why he was arrested. And you, Linda, were up to your neck in it." Linda was silent, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know. I didn't know what he was doing." Jack laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You knew enough to cheat on your husband. You knew enough to lie to me, to deceive everyone. But now, you will know what it's like to be cheated on." Jack then revealed to Linda the secret he had been keeping for so long. He explained how he had accumulated a fortune in secret investments and accounts, beyond anyone's reach. He told how he used this fortune to manipulate Michael's downfall, exposing his frauds and ensuring his arrest. "I waited for the right moment, Linda. I waited until I was sure both of you would feel the weight of your actions. And now, you're alone, with no one to turn to, with nothing." Linda sobbed, pain and guilt crushing her chest. "Jack, please. I made a mistake. I was blind, but now I see what I did. Please forgive me." Jack looked at her coldly. "Forgive you? After everything you've done?" "No, Linda. You will pay for every tear, for every night I spent thinking about what I did to deserve this." As Jack spoke, Linda's phone started ringing. It was Sarah. Linda answered, her voice shaking. "Sarah, I don't know what to do. Jack found out everything. He knows about Michael and me. He destroyed us." On the other end of the line, Sarah listened in silence. She was also involved in Jack's plan, but her participation was more subtle. Michael's betrayal had hurt her deeply, and she saw Jack's revenge as a way to get justice. Beautiful, I'm so sorry, Sarah replied, her voice full of regret. I didn't know things would come to this. But maybe you'd better face it at once. Linda hung up the phone, tears still flowing. What do you want me to do, Jack? How can I fix this? Jack looked at her, his eyes hard as stone. You will leave this house. You will live with the weight of your guilt, knowing that you destroyed not only your marriage, but the lives of several people. And as for me, I will move on, but I will never forget what he did. Linda, with nowhere to go, packed up some of her things and left the house that same night. The feeling of emptiness consumed her as she walked through the cold streets of Detroit, aimless, without hope. Meanwhile, Jack felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. He had achieved his revenge, but the cost was high. He lost the woman he loved, but her betrayal could never be forgiven. Sitting in front of the fireplace, he stared into the flames, pondering what the future held. The revenge was complete, but the scars would remain forever. The days that followed were a mixture of silence and reflection for Jack. Linda had disappeared from his life, but the city of Detroit continued to revolve around her. Jack knew life would take its course, but he still had to deal with the consequences of his own actions. He started going to a local bar, a discreet place where he could be at peace with his thoughts. Sitting at the counter, he watched people, trying to figure out how to move forward. It was on one of these lonely nights that he met Sarah again. She was there, alone, with a glass of wine in her hand. "Can I sit down?" she asked, her voice soft. Jack nodded, and Sarah settled in next to him. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke, just sharing the silence. "I heard about Linda," Sarah said finally. "She's devastated, Jack. I know you did what you needed to do, but, isn't there a path to redemption?" Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Sarah. She broke something inside me that may never be fixed." Revenge brought relief, but it also left a void. Sarah looked at him with compassion. "Sometimes forgiveness is the hardest path, but also the most necessary. Not for her, but for you. So that you can find peace." Sarah's words resonated with Jack, and he began to reconsider his actions. Revenge had been fulfilled, but the pain still persisted. Maybe Sarah was right, perhaps forgiveness was the necessary step towards healing. As he was thinking about this, a news item on the bar's television caught his attention. Michael had been sentenced to a long prison sentence for his frauds. Justice had been served, and that brought Jack some relief. He knew Michael would pay for his crimes, but the cold revenge he had carried out still weighed heavily on his conscience. Over the next few days, Jack began looking for Linda. He needed to confront her one last time, not out of anger, but with the intention of finding some kind of closure. After several attempts, he finally found her in a small apartment in suburban Detroit. Linda was visibly dejected, the marks of betrayal and revenge written all over her face. "Jack," she said, surprised to see him. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," he replied, entering the modest apartment. "I did what I did because I was hurt, betrayed. But the truth is, it didn't bring the peace I hoped for. We need to find a way to move forward, even if it's apart." Linda nodded, tears flowing again. "I know I messed up, Jack. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fix. But if there's some way to repair the damage, I'm willing to try." They talked for hours, expunging all the accumulated pain and regrets. It wasn't a full pardon, but it was a start. Jack knew the road to recovery would be long, but he was willing to try. Over time, Jack began to rebuild his life. He continued with his passion for restoring cars, finding a certain peace in manual work. Linda, in turn, began attending therapy sessions, trying to understand her own mistakes and find a path to redemption. The occasional meetings between Jack and Sarah also brought a new perspective to both of them. They found comfort and understanding in each other, building a friendship that blossomed in unexpected ways. The weight of revenge was replaced by a mutual search for peace and understanding. Detroit, with its lights and shadows, continued to be the scene of their lives. The city, which had witnessed so much pain and betrayal, now also saw the emergence of new possibilities. Jack has learned that revenge can bring momentary satisfaction, but the real challenge is finding inner peace. Jack and Linda went their separate ways, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. The betrayal would never be forgotten, but both were determined to learn from their mistakes and seek a better life. Jack found new purpose in helping others restore their own vintage cars, a metaphor for the restoration of his own soul. Finally, one sunny afternoon, Jack visited Sarah in the park where she used to walk. They sat together, in silence, just enjoying each other's company. It wasn't the end, but a new beginning, one where forgiveness and peace took place alongside the painful memories. "Do you think we can really put the past behind us?" Jack asked, looking at the horizon. Sarah smiled softly. "We can't change what happened, but we can decide how it will shape us from now on. And I believe we can find a way, Jack." With those words, Jack felt a lightness he hadn't felt in a long time. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, he felt like he could face it with hope. And so, under the Detroit sky, two wounded hearts began to heal, finding strength and solace in each other. Spring began to emerge in Detroit, bringing with it a lightness that contrasted with the heavy winter months and the coldness of Jack's revenge. The sun shone brighter, and the days became longer, as if the city was trying to leave behind the dark events that marked it. Jack continued his journey of personal reconstruction, focusing on his work and his new friendship with Sarah. Linda, on the other hand, was in a deep process of self-evaluation. The therapy sessions were starting to show results, and she began to understand the motivations behind her actions. She felt genuine remorse and was determined to change her life. Without the pressure of her toxic relationship with Michael, Linda began to search for a new purpose. He signed up for art courses, something he always had a passion for, but never had the courage to pursue. Meanwhile, Jack found a kind of peace in helping others. He organized a community event to restore vintage cars, bringing Detroit enthusiasts together to share their stories and knowledge. At the event, he found support and understanding, discovering that many there also had their own emotional scars. By helping restore cars, Jack felt like he was, in some way, restoring pieces of his own soul. Sarah was also in a healing process. Her marriage to Michael had long been a sham, and now, with him in prison, she began to rediscover her own identity. The friendship with Jack grew stronger, and both found comfort in conversations and shared moments. Sarah dedicated herself to volunteer work, helping victims of abuse and trauma, finding a new purpose in her life. One sunny afternoon, Jack received an unexpected invitation. It was from Linda, asking to meet him at a cafe they used to go to before everything fell apart. Jack hesitated, but felt it was a necessary step for both of them. When he arrived, he found Linda already sitting, looking more serene than she had in recent months. "Thanks for coming, Jack," she said, with a shy smile. "I know it might not be easy, but I needed to talk to you." Jack sat, watching her closely. "What do you want, Linda?" "I wanted to apologize, again. And not just with words. I want to show that I'm changing. I've been working on myself, trying to understand and correct my mistakes. I know it might be too late for us, but I needed you to know." Jack felt a mix of emotions. "Linda, what you did destroyed us. But I see that you are trying to change, and that is important. I don't know if I will ever be able to forgive you completely, but I appreciate you making this effort." They talked for a while, sharing memories good and bad. It wasn't a fresh start, but a way to find closure. They both knew their paths would likely go in different directions, but there was relief in knowing they were making peace with the past. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her volunteer work, increasingly involved in the community. Her friendship with Jack blossomed, and together, they began to consider new possibilities. Sarah, who had always had a talent for writing, began documenting the stories of people she helped, and Jack encouraged her to publish a book with these narratives. Detroit, with its ability to reinvent itself, reflected each of their personal journeys. The city still had its shadows, but there was also hope and renewal. Jack, Sarah and Linda were all, in their own ways, finding new paths, leaving the darkness of winter behind. Jack decided it was time for a fresh start. He planned a trip, something he always wanted to do but never had the opportunity. He invited Sarah to accompany him, and she enthusiastically accepted. It was a chance to start over, away from painful memories, in search of new adventures. Before leaving, Jack paid one last visit to the warehouse where he spent so many lonely nights. The '67 Mustang was completely restored, shining like new. He ran his hand over the hood, feeling a sense of accomplishment. That car was a metaphor for his life, damaged, but now renewed. When the morning of the trip arrived, Jack and Sarah set off into the unknown, with the sun rising behind them. Detroit would be left behind, but the lessons learned and emotional scars would remain a part of who they were. They both knew the future was uncertain, but they were ready to face it together. Linda, watching from afar, felt a mixture of sadness and hope. I knew the journey of self-discovery and redemption would be long, but I was determined to move forward. He began to envision a different future, one where his actions were guided by honesty and self-love. The climax of the story had passed, but the reverberations continued to shape the lives of everyone involved. Jack's revenge, although painful, brought profound lessons and the possibility of a new beginning. Now, each of them was ready to write the next chapter of their lives, with more wisdom and a lighter heart. Jack and Sarah's trip was a rebirth for both of them. They traveled unknown roads, visited small towns and rediscovered the joy of living. However, destiny took them back to Detroit, as if the city had one last chapter to reveal to them. Upon returning, Jack received an unexpected call from Linda. She was in the hospital, victim of a car accident. Without hesitation, he and Sarah went to visit her. They found Linda fragile, but with a look of resignation. She confessed that, in recent months, she had felt haunted by the weight of her actions and, while trying to escape her own demons, she lost control of the car. "Jack, Sarah," she said in a weak voice, "I want you to know that I'm sorry for everything. But what scares me most is that, even after everything, I still love you. I just hope that one day you can tell me forgive." Jack looked at her, feeling a mixture of pity and relief. "Beautiful, the past cannot be changed. But we can try to move forward. I hope you find the peace you are looking for." The hospital visit marked a turning point. Jack realized that his journey of revenge, although justified, did not bring him the true peace he sought. He decided it was time to truly forgive, not for Linda, but for himself. He left the hospital with Sarah, both determined to start a new chapter together, without the shadow of the past. Sarah, in turn, found success with her book, which became a bestseller. Her stories of overcoming and resilience touched many hearts, and she was invited to several lectures. During one of these lectures, she was approached by a publisher interested in turning the book into a documentary. Sarah accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to expand her positive impact on the world. Jack, alongside Sarah, found a new mission. He began working with young people in Detroit, teaching them how to restore cars. His garage turned into a community center, where teens found a refuge and a chance to learn a valuable skill. He became a mentor, sharing not only technical knowledge but also life lessons about resilience and overcoming. Linda, after the accident, faced a long recovery. During this time, he reflected deeply on his actions and the impact they had. She decided to dedicate her life to helping others who, like her, made mistakes and needed a second chance. She began volunteering at a rehabilitation center, using her own experience as an example that redemption is possible. The months turned into years, and each character found their path to healing. Jack and Sarah have built a life together marked by love, understanding and a deep commitment to helping others. Their friendship grew into a solid relationship, a foundation on which they built a bright future. Linda, in her new role as a counselor, found a new family among those she helped. She became a figure of hope and redemption, proving that even the greatest betrayals can be overcome with time, effort, and genuine repentance. Michael's fate, however, was less redemptive. In prison, he faced the harsh reality of his crimes and the betrayal of his own business partners. Without the corrupting influence that fueled him, he had to face the true extent of his failures. His future remained uncertain, marked by the choices he made and the lost opportunities for redemption. Detroit, ever-changing, has continued to be a symbol of resilience and renewal. The city, with its scars and its beauty, reflected the journey of Jack, Sarah and Linda. They all, in different ways, found new meanings in their lives, leaving behind the shadows of the past. On a sunny afternoon, Jack, Sarah and Linda met again in the park. Sitting together, they looked at the horizon, where the city of Detroit stretched out before them, a testament to their struggles and achievements. "We're here," Jack said, holding Sarah's hand. "Together, despite everything." "Yes," Linda replied, with a calm smile. "Together and stronger than before." And so, under the vast, blue sky of Detroit, 3 lives that had become painfully and unexpectedly intertwined found new purpose. Revenge gave way to forgiveness, and pain turned into strength. The future, although uncertain, was faced with courage and hope. And the city, with its lights and shadows, continued to be the backdrop of their stories, a silent witness to their journeys of redemption and renewal.